I went to middle and high school in a small town in Kentucky. My 8th grade year, they implemented a pilot program where certain 8th graders would take high school algebra that year instead of typical 8th grade math. A select few of us, when that first semester was done, were moved forward to geometry. As such, those 6 or 8 of us ended up taking Algebra 2 freshman year, then pre-calc, calc, and calc 2. They had never offered Calc 2 before, and there were only 6 or so of us taking it, so we shared both a classroom and a teacher with Calculus 1. Our teacher spent most of her time with the majority of her students, the only reasonable choice you could really expect in that situation. She would briefly teach us our lessons, then have us spend most of our time working it out through our textbook. It worked really well for me, personally, but I remember starkly one class period where we were first working on antiderivatives, which might not be advanced enough for like a Calc 2 class in most places. I don't really know. Our county was not at the forefront of anything, really. We were working on antiderivatives, though. I found them quite fun. It was like doing a little puzzle. 2 of my classmates were struggling with it, not because they weren't smart and not because they couldn't do it. They could. I saw them do it. But because they didn't understand why we were doing the things we were doing. I was asked for help by them, and looking back, I feel like I was maybe an asshole in the moment. I didn't understand their need to know. As a mental roadblock, it didn't make sense to me. I like learning. That's an asinine statement, isn't it? It's fun to explore the world, though. I like stories, I like love and people. I find people really interesting. I'm not particularly outgoing, but I like observing. Video essays and essays in general are an intriguing art form to me because of how reflective they tend to be. You learn a lot about an essayist. Education is often driven by curiosity, and rejection of education is often framed in the same lens. When kids ask, "Okay, but when am I ever going to use this, Mrs. Skibbity?" Like, come on, Mr. Beast Toilet, tell me why we're learning this. That is, at least sometimes, an honest frustration born from curiosity, from a need to understand. Note, I didn't say a need to know. You can know and accept many things without necessarily knowing the meaning behind them. What is meaning? I started reading Yuhki Kamatani's queer coming-of-age manga Shimanami Tasogare, or Our Dreams at Dusk, in high school. It's not my favorite manga. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's my favorite of Kamatani's works, but it's a load-bearing piece of art for me. It's the most important manga I've read. It's the one that changed me. 1. The manga. Spoiler alert for everything. Tasuku Kanami is a high school student who gets outed at school when one of his classmates finds gay porn in his browser history on his phone. Tasuku immediately goes into denial mode and makes sure to do what plenty of deeply closeted people do. I'm sure some of you are guilty of this. I was probably guilty of this at one point. He throws out some homophobia and says the very idea of it is gross. I distinctly remember doing that when someone said a guy had a crush on me when I was in middle school in 6th grade. It happens. He claims the video and browser history stuff is things that his brother sent him as a prank. That excuse doesn't seem to work. Japan, if you're unaware, was not a bastion of queer rights or acceptance in the 2010s, and you can't really say that it is now in the 2020s either, though it does seem to be getting better. Frightful of the homophobia potentially facing him the next morning, he climbs a bit up the mountain of their city and thinks about throwing himself over the railing. Before Tasuku can kill himself, he sees a different person jump from a higher point. Forgetting about his own self and his own troubles, Tasuku runs to where he saw the person leap, rushing into a drop-in center where he worriedly tells everyone about it. They don't seem all that worried, though. That's when the person who leapt walks right back inside. Their name is Someone, and they comment on how Tasuku didn't jump after all. He follows them up a hike where Someone declares, as they often do, "You can tell me anything." I won't listen, though. Without naming his sexuality or even really what happened, Tasuku bears his heart and his fears. Someone tells him to come by the drop-in center again. Maybe someone there will listen. Some people there are gay. Someone leaves by leaping from the tall height and walking down on the air. Tasuku takes in the beautiful, confusing view and resolves to face tomorrow. Some of his classmates are cruel. They keep going on about homosexuality, even the ones who aren't homophobic. It is intense and unending and too much. Tasuku yells at them and rushes to the drop-in center. He comes out to someone who, a bit coldly, leaves him sobbing in his overwhelmed state. He goes to table tennis practice and manages to gently tell off his friend when he's being a bit homophobic. When Tasuku returns to the drop-in center, he's roped into helping two of the adult members, Daiichi and Utsumi, demolish a building that needs refurbishing. They're part of a non-profit that fixes these abandoned or broken places and turns them into something new. Metaphors, They haven't determined what to do with this building, which is owned by someone. Tasuku is the one who is given the burden of deciding. When you make a decision, that's it. The future comes. But it comes either way. The majority of the story revolves around Tasuku coming to terms with his identity and what it means to be part of the LGBT community. We meet the normal members of the drop-in center. Daiichi, a sort of mother figure to the drop-in center, is a lesbian who moved from a bigger city after she came out and it didn't go well. She's dating and living with the semi-closeted Saki, who works at her family's restaurant. Utsumi is a gentle, though rather masculine, trans man who works in construction. Chaiko is a music-loving old man whose long-term partner is in the hospital with cancer. Misura is a student a few years younger than Tasuku who, at first, seems sure of themselves, perhaps a trans girl, but they're confused and trying to figure out who they are and what they want. They like dressing as a girl. Maybe they're trans, but they don't know. It's scary to have to try to understand yourself and what that means in this world. He and Misora grow a bit close, almost as if Tasuku takes on an older brother role, or perhaps a first crush. He tells Misora they're cute in their dresses and makeup, and reassures them through all their doubt and hesitations. There's a festival with fireworks. Oh, classic. And Tasuku convinces Misora to go with him whilst dressed as a girl. They have a lot of fun together, until someone inappropriately touches Misora in a crowd. They need Tasuku, and that stupid teenage kid doesn't know the right thing to say. When he says it was because Misora is so cute, you get the vibe that he's trying to be reassuring. But we all know that that isn't. Any of us who've been, can tell you that that's the exact wrong thing to say. Misora, angry, attacks him and calls him the F-slur loudly in a crowd that includes Tasuku's classmates. When he goes to the drop-in for advice, they say sometimes you give a push and the person just wasn't ready for it. Sometimes we mean well and we hurt someone anyway. One of Tasuku's classmates who saw the incident is Tsubaki, a volleyball jock Tasuku has a crush on. Tsubaki starts helping out with the renovations. He hangs out some with Tasuku. It's clear to the reader that Tsubaki is at least curious about Tasuku and same-sex relationships. He teases him and makes pretty clear he knows that Tasuku likes him, and he maybe likes that. Just like Tasuku did in the first chapter, though, he talks down on LGBT people. Tsubaki's terrified that he might actually be gay and what that might mean. When someone asks Tsubaki about that, he lashes out. He shouts homophobic things at Tasuku, and Tasuku, normally so shy and sweet, finally explodes back with frustration and anger. You hurt me, and even if you can't accept me, I don't want the person I like to keep hurting people. Tsubaki cries. He apologizes. Tasuku suggests Daiichi and Saki get married in that building he was put in charge of. It's a wonderful idea. Saki is outed to her parents by Tsubaki's homophobic father, but they accept her. Tsubaki, not entirely sure of who he is or if he'll be able to return Tasuku's feelings, starts going to the drop-in center more. They all work to prepare for the wedding. Misono comes to it. At the wedding, Chaiko's lover's son texts him. His lover, Ilya, is in critical condition. He doesn't have long. Chaiko hadn't been avoiding the son, thinking he wouldn't approve or want him there, thinking perhaps he wouldn't be allowed at Ilya's deathbed because they weren't married, because Japan doesn't have gay marriage, and because only family is allowed, or those who have the family's permission. But the son summons him, and he goes, and Ilya says he had so much fun spending his life with Chaiko. He dies. We end the manga thinking about the future. All the characters have grown just a little. They've accepted their pasts and themselves just a little more. They're still anxious about the future. The future is scary. So you take deep breaths and you walk forward. There's hope. It'll be difficult. There will be pain given and received, but there's hope. The manga seems to have been made to tell LGBT people not to kill ourselves. because tomorrow might be a step towards something better. There's hope. And there is. 2. Understanding. Tasuku's story is one of trying to understand himself and those around him, which as a statement is sort of redundant. The self exists within the context of that which it exists within. We understand ourselves through exploring the other. Someone exists as a mysterious being for basically the entire cast. Their gender is unknown, they are asexual and aromantic. They listen without listening, they walk on the sky, stars follow them. After hearing a bit about their backstory from Chaiko, Tasuku asks someone if they're the way they are because they're asexual. They simply smile and turn the question back on him. Is everything about Tasuku born from his being gay? Of course not. It's part of him. It's an ingredient in the soup, and so it bleeds through into everything, but it's only one ingredient. He's young and just discovering himself. In a relatively short period of time, he went from in the closet to the target of homophobic abuse to admitting who he is and embracing himself. At this point in his life, his sexuality is very important to his understanding of who he is and how he interacts with the world. But it isn't all he is. Tasuku wants to understand someone. He wanted to understand Misono. An old classmate of Utsuki's, a woman named Oyama, seemingly wants to understand him, though her attempts come off as try-hard and pitying despite her well-meaning. Tsubaki attempts growing close to Tasuku because he wants to understand both Tasuku and himself. In their attempts to understand, a lot of pain is born. Tasuku hurts Misono, Oyama hurts Utsuki, Tsubaki hurts Tasuku. Is it bad to want to know another person? When Tasuku asks them about why and who they are, someone launches into a series of things they can be. Man, woman, human, dinosaur, tiny, large, whatever Tasuku perceives them to be. This is a form of the existential crisis, not necessarily in how it's presented in philosophy, but how it often appears plot-wise in existential theater. How do you define the self? Do you exist only as others see you? Is that how you define yourself? Is that how you know you exist? Someone does not want to be understood. They do not want to be a specific person. They want to be a someone from somewhere who is something. They accept few labels and express few parts of themselves. You can tell me anything. I won't listen though. I will exist here, so you are not alone, but I am just a person. I cannot and will not save you. I am not a therapist nor a friend filled with advice. I am merely someone who is here, and you may finally get what you need off your chest without worrying that the person you're talking to will care to repeat it, because again, I am not listening. What sort of answer is this to the existential plot? It seems to both pass and fail the test. They are both purely themselves, defined by what they want in an absurd universe where they can nap in the embrace of a cloud. Beautiful imagery, by the way. They are also whatever you perceive them to be. Cast me how you want, and you will not be wrong, for I am merely someone. They seem to exist with confidence. They know who they are and who they want to be, and they find meaning in that. Except someone's performance, their desire to be a someone, is still a definition via the other. I'm not listening, someone says over and over. When Chaiko talks about how his husband is dying in that very moment, someone should theoretically not do a thing. That would be in line with the persona they want to give off. And yet, with a face on the verge of tears, they give Chaiko a push on the back. Through a single shove, they seem to say, without saying it, "Go to him, please, for both our sakes." In this final chapter, you start to realize someone is always giving a little push. They are always meddling. They are always listening. They just want to pretend not to be. They want you to be comfortable enough to imagine they are not, but they are. Someone is listening. Do you understand? Can we ever really know someone? Anyone? If we can't truly understand someone, can we ever truly understand ourselves? As someone lists the various ways they might be, Tasuku gets overwhelmed. He feels like someone is slipping out of his grasp in view. They are building a wall and running away. Tasuku interrupts and breaks free of the cascading imagery. He grabs someone by the hand. In response to who someone might be, he says, "You're right here." Whoever they are right in front of him, alive, breathing, real, and that's enough. It's all they have to be. Someone smiles, says thanks, and falls away into the air as they so often do. The manga says that it is not bad to try to understand someone, but you often won't. And perhaps you can't. After all, aren't we all spending forever trying to figure out exactly who we are? If I'm an unknown to myself to some degree, then of course I can never truly understand someone else at every level, but I don't have to. We are all of us enigmas. What's important is that you are human. You exist, and so you deserve happiness and peace and people to share a smile with, even if you don't truly understand each other. That is acceptance. What does any of this have to do with me or why this manga is important for my personal development, though? I didn't meet or see any media, really, about trans people until I was in college. I knew of transness, but I didn't get it. Not getting it somewhat frustrated me, just like those kids in calculus. I wanted to understand. I needed an explanation. Except, no, I didn't. I do not know what it is like to be trans. I am a cis man who takes his cisness for granted and who doesn't think about it. Being a man isn't particularly important to me, so when I see all of these like masculinity crisis things, they don't make sense. I don't understand. There are a lot of things about others that I cannot wrap my head around completely. Do I need to understand in order to empathize and hold someone in my hands, metaphorically or physically? No. When I finish the manga, I let go of my need to understand. I do not and maybe cannot know what it is like to be trans. That doesn't matter. Throughout her video essays, YouTuber ContraPoints often explores what might be proper or convincing explanations about what it is to be trans. She eventually came to the conclusion that there might not be one. The quality of being trans is simply a thing that is, and that's okay. I believe in the performativity of gender, meaning the answer to what is a woman is a person who says she is and in saying she means it. There are cis men, transphobes in particular, who like to go, I'm a woman now. But they don't intend for that statement to have literal meaning. It's not performative. A lot of the stress over trans acceptance, like gay acceptance before and around it still, is based on a fear of the unknown. People who do not understand it are distressed in situations where they don't understand something become virulently hateful. There is a cult of meaning that cannot stand the idea of absurdity. So if there is something that seems absurd to them, they reject it. To accept it and its lack of personal understandability feels as though they are stepping closer to having to acknowledge and deal with absurdism. That's scary. Opposition to trans rights and outright hostility are typically conservative coded. In the 2024 presidential election, part of why Kamala Harris was seen as too left-wing by certain voters was her correct embrace of trans rights. But bigotry has never been confined to one part of the political spectrum or the other. In 2023, the Communist Party of Britain released an anti-trans statement which read, "Gender is an ideological construct, should not be confused or conflated with the material reality of biological sex. Gender is the vehicle through which misogyny is enacted and normalized. Gender identity ideology is well suited to the needs of the capitalist class, focusing as it does on individual as opposed to collective rights, enabling and supporting the super exploitation of women." When I did an exploration into the American Communist Party, a group of performatively aggressive guys who are very clearly insecure in their masculinity, I came across a lot of transphobia amongst its board members. It's tempting to argue that the ACP isn't left-wing. They're a group of MAGA communists, which, if this is the first time you're hearing that combo of words, probably sounds oxymoronic, emphasis on moronic. Yet this sort of social conservative reactionary left politics are also at play in China with the CCP's social policies. With CPOP, the issue seems to be born from a dogmatic obsession with a particular form of materialism. There does not seem to be a hard science explanation of transness. There isn't one that they find convincing. They see being trans, then, as a form of idealism. To accept it would be to challenge their entire worldview. Because they do not understand it, they must reject it. It's too scary. Now, from what I've gathered, materialists don't have to behave this way. There are plenty who view being trans as a material reality. It is not bad to want to understand someone or something. Part of the joy of being in love is discovering new bits about a person. but a need to understand can often be damaging. Curiosity kills the cat, but not merely the curious cat. It can often kill the mysterious cat. You open the box because you need to know if the cat is alive or not, and in so opening it, you kill the poor thing. Sometimes we must accept not knowing. Easier said than done. In the game Disco Elysium, the player character is a detective named Harry. Harry is a very curious individual. He has a series of unending questions, and he will ask, and he will ask, and he will goddamn ask. He doesn't necessarily want to know. He needs to know. He must know. This lends itself to thorough detective work. Leads, even seemingly inconsequential ones, will be followed because they are mysteries that present unknowns, and Harry must understand. This very trait, the one that makes him good at what he does, is the trait that destroys him over and over again in every aspect of his life. Harry is miserable. He makes people around him miserable. He is unable to accept anything. He has to understand it. The mind with unending questions will kill itself and everyone else around it. It becomes incredibly hard to move on from pain because you seek to find an answer, a reason. Perhaps then, if you can understand it, you can fix it. Perhaps you can obtain that happiness which was taken from you. It's a longing for control, but none of us has that much control. None of us is so great and powerful. So, should we stop? Should we stop trying to understand? No. And I don't think that's what Kamatani is arguing in their manga either. It's not that understanding or endeavoring to understand or be understood are bad, but the relentless pursuit of such a thing, a greedy, selfish pursuit, can often harm others. There are many aspects of a person, any person, you and I will never fully understand. But we can still reach out, we can grab their hand regardless, and we can acknowledge that they're there, alive, human. Both of us and not of us. True understanding is not required of kindness, nor of love, nor of empathy. For a long time, that was my main takeaway from the manga. It helped me figure out how to better be kind and embrace that which I cannot or simply do not know. Obviously, I still struggle with this. Everyone does. I reread it in preparation to write this essay, and I had cried for the rest of the night when I finished. I am older now. I have come of age. Wink. 3. Coming of age. Normally my video essays are entirely scripted. I write out every single word I'm going to say. I do very little, if any, improv. Half the time I read from a teleprompter. I leave off-the-dome content for quick bites and vlogging stuff for Patreon. Like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff a good YouTuber should tell you to do. Go buy my poetry. But, I know how I'm going to react to talking about some of this, so I figured it might be better to jot down some specific topics that I want to cover and then simply speak. Doing a little bit of experimenting with you guys. So at its core, this is a coming-of-age manga. We associate coming-of-age stories with a certain period of youth, a transition from youthful innocence to a sort of adult moroseness, a death of naivete. But isn't almost every story a coming-of-age story? We are all constantly coming of age. We just like to pretend elsewise because we don't necessarily want to acknowledge that we don't feel ready. As I've gotten older, it seems the things that resonate with me in the manga have changed a bit. When I first read it, I was about Tasuku's age, and I wanted him to get in a relationship with Tsubaki and be happy and break free of the closet. And those are the things that I focused on. I focused on his experience and his journey, and everyone else was just an interesting side character that mattered, but not too terribly much. Nostalgia can be a trap, right? But it can be good to return to things after you have come to a certain age and feel the bits that you were too young or immature to feel before. The parts that get to me about it have changed quite a bit. Obviously, the core message and what I find important about the manga has mostly stayed the same. But the side characters now feel more in my face, probably because I'm closer to their age and their points in life than I am with Tasuku's now. When I was younger and I read the lesbian storyline with Daiichi and Saki still being somewhat in the closet, I was annoyed with Saki, and I was thinking to myself, I would never date or put up with someone who was still in the closet because the closet is an awful place to be and it hurts a lot. And when I was first reading it, I was still somewhat in the closet. By the time I finished it for the first time in college, I'm pretty sure I was out to everyone I knew. But that was my thought. I was thinking that she should come out because she's hurting Daiichi by staying in the closet, and you have to deal with that shit. My thoughts on that have changed a little bit as I've gotten older. I would still like for someone to proudly declare their love for me to everyone. I think all of us want that, to be loudly and proudly beloved. And that doesn't mean shouting from mountaintops or posting all over social media, but I think we all understand the core want there. Since the pandemic, I've lived in a pretty liberal city. It's a beautiful place. It has a decent gay scene. It's supposed to be accepting. And a person who I love, we were out on the town having some drinks. We weren't going to drive home because that was irresponsible, and we had walked in the first place, so we didn't have our cars anyway. So we were going to get an Uber, and he called an Uber, and he told me before the car got there, hey, don't hold my hand when we're in there. And at the time, I was frustrated by this. This was my first relationship, and I was deeply in love, and we had our issues. And at first, it felt like a rejection, a shame had toward me. But right before we got back home, unprompted, our Uber driver started telling us about how COVID and everything wrong with the world was some sort of holy punishment from God for all of those filthy homosexuals. And I understood, you know? Even this place where I'd felt safe wasn't necessarily so. When I was going to college, the college town I was in started having its first prides in October, following the southern tradition of it's too damn hot outside to do this crap in June. And I went to it, and I was walking back to campus. I don't remember if I was living in a dorm or an apartment at that point. And this truck drove by, and they shouted the F slur at me. And I kind of just wrote this off as, this is like a hillbilly Kentucky thing, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine when I get out of there. And then I got here, and the hand holding thing, and I was a few years later providing percussion and Foley for a production of Spring Awakening. After, I think it was the dress rehearsal, I was walking back to my car from the theater, and here, in a place that was supposed to be good and better, a car drove by, and these guys shouted the F slur at me. I'm not going back in the closet for anyone, but I understand it a little bit better now that The part that always gets me in the manga is the last chapter with Chaiko and Ilya, the old man who loves music and the partner he's had for 31 years, Ilya, who is in the hospital with terminal cancer and dying. And in that final chapter, he he passes away. Chaiko needs the push to go to the hospital, and he goes there, and he holds Ilya's hand, and Ilya says something along the lines of, "I had so much fun with you. I have not lived a life that long. I've not loved someone that long." It's a nice love story, but one of the poems in my ekphrastic collection, A Museum of Art and Eggs, is it's about this manga and how it affected me. I'm gonna be honest. I don't I don't know which outcome is worse: to regret not having been there, or to get a happy goodbye. Even happiness has its pains. Even lasting love hurts, and that's you know that, of course, you know that at all points in your life. As soon as you're aware of things like mortality, I had so much fun with you. That's the part that gets me to cry. Um, just because of the sentiment expressed in the visual, because he rises up and it's like they're dancing one last time. When I was younger, I did not appreciate the prevalence of the gay age story, and especially not how it seemed like that was the only kind of story we were allowed to tell and have taken seriously as art. The tragic gay is the story critics used to long for. And then as I've gotten older, as I've come of age, I appreciate those stories a lot more. Reading Chaiko's journey, where he talks about how he would have to have the family's permission to be at Ilya's side as he dies and takes his final breath, because they don't have marriage there, and you have to be family, or you have to have the family's permission. And it just casts me back, not even just to all the art, but to all the stories I've read of all of the people we lost before I was even born, and the suffering, and how they didn't even get to say proper goodbyes or have someone, their loved one, comforting them in their last moments. We've come a long way. We've come a long way. Here in America, at least. That sort of tragedy was happening all the way up until 2015, when I was still in high school, and gay marriage finally became a thing. And before that, people were still being denied just the basic ability to be in the hospital, as and that's denied to a lot of people around the world still. And that's a tragedy, to say the least. And sometimes I see these kids, I say kids, I just mean Gen Z folk, a year or so, a few years younger than me. Technically I'm Gen Z, and they just kind of shit on gay marriage as a focal point for the gay rights movement. And I don't think they understand, which is fair. I was young too. I always had the desire, and I still do, to get married. That's been my dream for a long time. So it was always a bit of an important fight for me, but I didn't understand the depths of why it is such an important fight until I started looking into it. And I did that when I was young, and I guess I still am young, whatever, but it's not really a political fight anymore, even though I would say it probably still is. Be on the watch for shifting polls amongst the GOP and look at all of their state platforms. The vast majority of them still call for the overturning of Obergefell and getting rid of gay marriage. We're not out of the woods yet, guys. But there's so much left shitting on that as like a big part of it all. And there's a minimization of it and the fight for it in other countries, but it's important to look at art like this, to understand the depths of pain that the denial of marriage leads to, causes, builds. That's the part that gets me now. And it's Pride Month, at least as of time of recording. And I am proud of myself and the work that I've put into becoming a better and happier person, kinder. I'm proud of how far we've come and how much our elders did for us. And one day gay rights will be everywhere. And all of this fighting and turmoil will be resigned to history books and art, and we'll look back at it and we'll think what a strange time people used to live in. I had so much fun with you. I don't know if I could ever handle being told that. What a lovely thing to be told, though, isn't it? It didn't hit me that hard the first time I got through the manga, but the last couple of times, I've gotten more emotional as I've gotten older, I guess. One of the other things the manga makes clear through a few storylines is that it is good to sit and think about your choices and consider them carefully, because once you've made them, they've been made. We do not have the ability to go back in time. The future will come, but the future is going to come anyway. Like, it's put it in terms of coming out quite a bit, that it's a decision that you should think over carefully, because sometimes, you're not in a safe place to come out, and you should consider your safety. But the future is gonna come anyway. You gotta make a choice. You can't. It doesn't matter how stagnant you try to be, how firm you try to plant yourself in any one spot. The world's gonna keep on turning. It's gonna keep on orbiting. The universe is going to keep on expanding. The future is going to come regardless. So consider your choice, but you do have to make it. You do. At some point. Or it'll be made for you, and you'll have to figure it out. There is no pausing time. There is no going back. The future is coming. All we can do is take deep breaths, face it, and do our best. Sorry, my mind is I don't I guess I don't really understand what's going on with it, which is kind of ironic and funny. since 2015 or so, whilst le wokisme was on the rise politically and offline, the internet has been on a slow and steady march toward cruelty. And that's infecting everyone. You see it all the time in every space. Everyone's obsessed with dunking and finding the right targets that they can direct their ire and hatred toward, because you gotta get it in. You gotta find the people it's right to make bleed, and then you gotta bleed them. Because elsewise, how are you gonna sedate your bloodlust, you know? Sedate, that's the wrong fucking word, but who cares? Sate, that's what I was thinking of. And, you know, people will call a lot of this anger righteous. They'll label it some political thing. They'll talk about how, no, this is populism, and so therefore it's good rage and cruelty. And it's like, whatever you want to call it, from whoever it comes from, it's contributing to a culture that is just mean. And that's the internet, which in turn leads to the rise in visibility, quickness, amount of just every ugly rack of bigotry there is. And this includes a lot of homophobia and transphobia, biphobia, every queer phobia you can think of. People are fucking rude to asexual people for no reason. And I think one thing that Kamatani is really pushing for, especially as they were writing this in a country which has less rights even now for queer people than we do here in America, that there is hope in spite of it all. Minds can change, and even if they don't, we can find community, we can find pockets, we can be happy. We will persevere. It's our dreams at dusk. Dusk is sometimes the darkness settling in, and a political moment that can feel rather bleak. We still must dream. We must dream of absurd things, of inane things, of happy things, of a better tomorrow. It's good manga. It's nice art. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. I feel like I've lost the track of what I want to say now. So maybe unscripted in-video essays isn't the way to go. You experiment, you win some, you lose some. So is such a such is life. Editing this is going to be fun. Okay, I don't really have a closing moment to end on, or like a nice wrap up of the thesis points. I'll just say, if you got to the end of this video, sound off in the comments about your favorite gay manga creators, you know, your favorite trans video essays or films, just good queer art. And, you know, I'm aiming to upload this in Pride Month in 2025, so that'll be nice. It'll be nice to see those recommendations and thoughts. Okay, next time, back to your regularly scripted programming. Fuck. Bye.